Welcome everyone to today's Edulastic event. We're having a math tools workshop where we're going to be going over the math tools that are available in Edulastic. We're really excited to have you today as we go over a bunch of the new features that you will find in Edulastic that'll up-level your skills when you're working with your students. To get started, I just want to find out who's here. And I want to invite you to introduce yourself. So please, in the chat, share where you're tuning in from. If you want to introduce a little more about yourself, feel free to do that as well. Also, I want to direct your attention to the Q&A box. If you want to ask a question during today's event, I'd like to invite you to use that box to please ask your questions. We're expecting a lot of people on today's webinar, and we don't want your question to get lost. We definitely want to be able to answer them today. So please enter questions in the Q&A box so that we can answer them either directly there or verbally. At the end of today's event, we'll also have time for you to have your questions answered during a designated Q&A time period. I also want to mention, before we truly dive into our introduction, that this is a more advanced Edulastic event. We're going to be talking about more advanced math features on Edulastic. So if you're brand new to Edulastic, we do encourage that you view our Edulastic 101 intro webinar or our Edulastic Premium intro webinar, depending on what kind of account you have, so you can get an overview of the basics of how to set up your account, roster your students, assign assessments, create and find assessments as well. And also look at the reports. We also have a webinar that goes over everything that's new for back to school. So we encourage you to check that out too. I think Jan's going to be entering that link in the chat. So here's today's plan. We're going to be going over the evaluation methods and question behavior, graphics, graphing, dynamic parameters, and examples of those, and also additional tools and resources available on Edulastic for math educators. I want to start out by introducing some of the presenters who are joining me today. So first up, I want to introduce Duane Runyon. Duane Runyon teaches 9th grade integrated math at Bear River Middle School in Garland, Utah. He has been teaching for 25 years and he loves incorporating new technology into his classroom. He's going to show us some of the really awesome questions he's authored in Edulastic, and also how to use dynamic parameters and graphing. So Duane just turned on his camera and gave a little wave. Thanks, Duane. And then our other featured presenter is Dr. Lawrence Chernin. Dr. Chernin began his career as an astrophysicist at Berkeley after completing a PhD at Harvard University. He has over 20 years of experience in technology development, and he is the product architect of the Edulastic math questions. So very excited to have him on the webinar as well to share with us today. And then my name is Ileana Betancourt, and I work at Edulastic to help connect teachers and educators around the country and around the world to this awesome tool. I've been working in this type of role, connecting educators to cool resources for about, I would say about 10 years now. So I'm really excited to be here today to help host this webinar. We also have additional Edulastic staff in the chat who will be helping to answer questions. So those people, Abel, Jan, Aditya, and Leslie, will be available to help with those. So thank you very much to everyone who is involved to make this webinar really awesome today. We have a lot of stuff we're trying to cover. Edulastic is a powerful online assessment tool and also a great tool for creating lessons, assignments, worksheets, all sorts of things to provide with students. There's tons of math content that's pre-made that's already available in the assessment library and also in the Edulastic Certified Content Bank, which is an item collection bank, an item bank that has tons of pre-vetted content available to teachers. The platform is usable for all subjects, but definitely has a lot available for math teachers in terms of the types of questions that are available. I just wanted to say one more thing here. Edulastic offers over 50 question types, and in addition to multiple choice, true and false, drag and drop, there are tons of math-specific question types to choose from. And when you're authoring a question, the process is generally the same. You enter a question stem, enter any distractors or the correct answer, you tell Edulastic how to grade it, and you add any other customizations. You can check the answer with preview, and finally add metadata such as standards so you can track learning and benefit from Edulastic's robust reports and analytics. It also auto-grades a lot of the questions, so that saves teachers tons of time. And every year in the spring, we calculate the amount of time that it saved. And during the time of Edulastic's existence, it's been over about 300 years, which is pretty incredible. At the turn of the summer, we released a bunch of new math tools in Edulastic. If you've been using Edulastic for at least 6 months, you probably noticed these changes. There have been the addition of evaluation options, which we'll be touching on today. There are addition of tons of different tools that'll allow you to customize your questions, and dynamic parameters we're also touching on today, custom keypads, scoring instructions, rubrics-based grading has had changes as well, and a lot more tools for graphing enhancements. So the updates that were made this summer have made the Edulastic platform even more powerful than before for both in-person and distance learning. And we will continue to build upon the platform and make it even stronger. And with that, I'd like to invite Duane to hop on and share some of what he's been doing in Edulastic, as well as dynamic parameters and graphing. Thanks, Duane.
Thank you, Ileana. Okay, so I need to give you just a little bit of background. I've been teaching for about 25 years now, and I got my master's in teaching mathematics, 10 years ago or so. And I've been looking for some time for something to test my students with something more than just the ABC kind of thing. And Ileana, I'm just going to have you forward, if you would, please, to the next slide. And here are some examples of some of the equations that I've come up with, some of the things that I've given my students. I've made quite a few, so it was hard to choose. But each of these, I like them because they're multiple parts. All of these are dynamic, and so the numbers that you see are different for each student. Well, as many as 200 different combinations. We typically just go with 25. And it's just been a really wonderful tool. The other part that we've also done is graphing. Show the next slide. And with graphing, we've been able to graph on just a line or with a coordinate plane. Also, you notice we found a really fun part, especially when we had this, well, I don't know if it's fun, but a really useful part, that we were able to embed video in our hints. So when our kids were sent home for school closures, we were able to embed instructions for each item type so that the kids could receive instruction through this tool. It became very, very valuable for us. So with that, let's go ahead and try. So go ahead and go to the next one, if you would, please. This kind of gives an outline of what I plan to do. I want to just show you briefly how to get started with dynamic parameters. It's really important that, and I think Lawrence will touch on this later, but it's really important that you activate the power user. We went for quite some time and didn't have that, so we didn't have the tools visible. Then we first create an item, choose dynamic parameters, use the codes. I'm going to show all of this in just a moment, and then define parameters to match the situation. So let's go ahead and I will share my screen with you and walk through this section. It won't take, there's so much we could do. There's so many great things that that we can share, that we can use to monitor our kids and to assess their progress. And this is just one of many, many, but the dynamic parameters carry through. And what I chose to do is to show one of the methods that we use a lot because it works really well with our 9th grade students. And that is we use a math multi-part. So I'll just demonstrate real quick how I would set up a dynamic parameter problem. So I first want to go to create a new item. I'm just going to do one from scratch. I will choose we really like the math here with using expressions and formulas. They're all very powerful. We love them, but we have found that we really like this part best. So I'll just demonstrate what we've done. So I'm going to choose for this one math and text and drop down.
Hey, Duane, I'm sorry to interrupt. A couple of people in the chat have said that you're a little bit hard to hear. So maybe you could speak up just a little bit.
So
Thanks.
I'll move my mic a little closer to me, and let's see if that helps. So is that better?
Good. Yeah, I hope I can hear you. There are 2 or 3 people said this, so.
I just need to put my teacher voice back on.
Yeah, right. Talk in your teacher voice.
Here on at the end of the day, but that's okay. Give some sort of instructions here. I'm not going to go into doing a real big thing, but the main thing is we're going to maybe just say solve for y. Sorry about that. And then what I'm going to do is I'll put in an equation. And the really nice thing about this is we can use the tool with the equation editor. And we can set the option right now to do dynamic parameters, or we can do it later. I'm going to choose it now. So once again, when you have power mode, this has the advanced options. We choose dynamic parameters. And we'll come back to this part. And we just choose this part here. Okay, so I'll go ahead and do a simple equation that the students would have to solve. And so, see, I'm going to do just straight y plus, and here's the code. You use an @ symbol prior to whatever variable you're going to use, and then you can immediately afterwards do a variable. Let's go equals answer here, like this. I'll call it B. And then I'm just thinking ahead a little bit, so I want to make this a little bit easier for me to do. So I'm going to go ahead and set that as a subtract. Okay, and then I need to give a place because this is a multi-part. This allows me to do one set of dynamic variables. I can ask multiple things about any given question. It's really nice that way. So I'll just choose a math input to put here. And then maybe I'll do this, enter answer. Okay, something like that. Okay, then in the math input, I need to put whatever answer I'm going to do. For this example, I'm just going to have it come up with y equals, let's do, yeah, at c x plus at d. And then what we'll do is we'll sort out how to do this down here. Each time I put in a variable, it will come up with different types of dynamics that we can use. So looking back at my problem, I have ax. I really don't want to have a 0 here. I would like the kids to have something tangible, easy to work with. And so I'm going to set my values here from 1 to 20. Then with b, this one's not going to be too bad. I'm just needing to move it across. So there's nothing that's too difficult for the kids. So I'm going to go for this one, 1 through 30. Okay, then I need to look back and see what values I have here. So I notice that my answer is, well, actually, it's going to be a of x. So I could just leave that as a of x here. Obviously, I haven't thought through this as well as I should, but there we go. So I'll just go ahead and put a there. And then thinking through the problem, because all we're going to have to do to solve this is move this across, move the x across the equation. It's just going to change it from negative to positive. So I'm pretty good to just go ahead and leave that a C. And you'll notice that when I come down to the bottom, that I've got it ready to go. Now, let's see, did I have C? Oh, I did have C. So I need to just put that back to B. Some of the real advantage of this, when we get into more depth, is we can have it calculate the formula to have it actually calculate what it would do. And I'll show you a couple of examples of things that we've made. Now, the last part that we need to do is make sure that we click on generate. It generates the possible solutions. And we preview it. And then this gives us an example of what the problem looks like. And then the student has to type in y equals, it should be 17x plus 8. If I did it correctly, then it shows that I got it right. Check the answer. There we go. So that's a real basic way to set these up. Of course, you'd go through and set your metadata and everything else to save it. They can get as complicated as you want, but the real important part with this idea is that you keep in mind the level that your student is at. Try to avoid negatives if that's what it needs to be. Try to keep your answers nice. And that just takes some practice working through it. I'm not sure, Ileana, if now would be a good time to ask questions, or if you want me to show something a little bit more advanced, what would you prefer?
Hi, Duane. Someone did have a question. Will this generate a different question for all students?
Okay, so that's a great question. Will it generate for all students? There is a chance that someone next to the other one will get the same question, but as you see, right now I have it set up to do 25 different variations. I could go as high as you see to 200, depending on my variables here. So I could do, say, 50 possible combinations. It'll generate that many more than what it does when it assigns. Oh, no, I'm talking too fast. When it assigns the test to the student, it generates an individual problem for each student. And yeah, there are some that may have the same question, but not likely. Great question. Do we have any others?
Yeah, hey Duane, there's a question in chat in the Q&A that says, where can we put our dynamic parameter variables, like at A, if we don't or want or need them in the question stem or within the expected answer?
That is a fantastic question, and one that we've been working with. They have to belong there, but they haven't set it up yet that you can't have variables outside. So it takes a little bit of finesse, but it's not impossible. We've done some pretty complicated. I think perhaps I should show some of the ones that we have done recently. Let's try this one. I know it's not real complicated, but the math input is what we've had to do is just have a x minus a equals b. The dynamic looks like this, and we've used a formula to get the answer for C. So the way that we do that here in formula is we don't use the @ symbol anymore. We use the. Right now, there isn't a way to have a variable that's outside of the formula, but you can use another method to do something similar, which is using a number. I think it's the number. Now, why don't you have to remind me? I think it's number sequence. If you choose number sequence on several variables, it will choose the same position in the sequence for all of them. So you could choose one as the A, one as B, and then give the answer C. So you can be in control of what those variables are. I hope that answered the question. Any others?
Thank you. Someone asked in the Q&A, can you use dynamic parameters to set up super basic problems like adding integers? This is a 7th grade teacher.
Okay, yeah, sure. So in fact, you can do this in story problems. Let me see if I can pull one of those up. I think probably it might be helpful for me just to preview a recent test that we did, because we had some of those. And I want to come down here to one of these. So you can see just by the view, you can see that this value here and here are numbers, and we just had them do it in equation. You don't have to have them use letters or variables. You can just use straight numbers. To look at that inside of it, you can just set up ranges, use a formula to give the answer. And then as we built this one, and this is why we like the multi-part so much, is we can do a story problem, we can put in the variables, we can go into more detail and say how we want it to look. This one, we had a variable with it. The other side, we wanted to have just the number. So that's all it is. And the really cool thing about this is we were concerned because mathematically, of course, it doesn't matter which side of the equation we put the expression and the answer. So we have an opportunity to do an alternative answer where we have swapped roles. You noticed that the expected answer this time has the formula, where the correct answer before just had the answer. So I hope that helps. Any other questions?
That's great. Thank you, Duane. There are a lot more questions coming through. I do want to give us time to move on to the next content, and we'll come back to these questions at the end, or we'll answer them in the chat. Sound good?
Do you want me to show a little bit with graphing?
Yes, on the graphing. Thank you.
Okay. So with graphing, I set up a little demo with graphing as well. So we'll go ahead and preview this one. Using graphing tools, we can set it up so that, like this one here is a number line where I'm asking the students to graph an inequality. In this case, we're looking at less than or equal to and less than. So the student chooses which one to use, and after some instruction, they discover this is the one they want to use. So they click on it, choose the lower limit, and then move it to the upper limit. The preview version that I have doesn't let me check it, but that works. The next kind that we used quite a bit was this was a unit on inequalities, which was just so exciting. This is such a neat tool. And this one shows a lot of things that you can do with it. So this inequality is y is less than or equal to 3x plus 2. So I'll choose the line tool. You can choose which tools here to use and which ones that the students can see. I limited this one to just line, dashed, and area, and then the other tools were standard. So that was really powerful so that the kids aren't overwhelmed. So on this one here, of course, I'll just click on 2, then rise 3, run 1. It gives me the line. If I wanted this to be just less than, without the equals to, I choose the dashed, and I can make it dotted line so that it no longer is equal. Of course, I can undo that move. Then the other part is, with this one, we need to choose the area. And so I can just click anywhere on the side of the line and it automatically fills it in. If I felt like I chose the wrong place, I teach my students this. We go to delete, they can click on it, and they can change the side of the area. We can also do the same kind of thing with systems of equations, but I think we probably have a good idea of what that looks like. Ileana, would you like me to show how these look on the teacher side of things for this?
That would be great. Thank you.
So then I will go ahead and open the detail on, let's try the inequality part. Now these don't have dynamic features at this point. It would be very complicated to have that, but it is very powerful as far as the tools that we have. We set the question here. We can set the example of what it looks like. And then the various items that you can choose. The tools that you can give the kids, let's see, I think it's down here. on the bottom. No. Oh, but this one is really exciting. I just love this. We made videos that showed the kids how to use these, and these video hints help guide the kids as we use this as a teaching tool. I'm just trying to remember where it is, but I think this one actually just has those tools. So that's the just an inequality. They call it range plotter. And so I'm going to drop out real quick and go back to an example of graphing. So here's an example of graphing. And on this one, it is a system of equations. So I have the ability to say which tools to show. I can have it ignore labels or have it labels there. The graphing controls would be given. Here's where you show the tools. So in the graphing one, you can choose which ones the students can see. So if I want them to have rays and segments available. Oh, no. There's another spot. Lawrence, maybe you'll have to help us find that out. But, oh, goodness. Anyway, so I can preview this mode, and I can see it here and draw it out. I think that's about what I had in mind to help to share with you today. Are there any other questions that you'd like me to cover?
Thanks, Duane. There was a question that came in. Someone was asking, when you create a question from scratch, which kind of question do you select when it comes to graphing, I think is what this person's asking.
That's a great question. So if I'm doing a new item and I'm choosing graphing, I'll go to graphing here. So if I want the line plot that I showed at the first, I use range plotter. And if I want to do graphing, let's do a full coordinate graph. The one that I've been using is graphing here. You also have the ability to do first quadrant and so forth. And this one is a new one for me. I haven't played with it. I'm excited to.
And we also have an article that goes over the differences between them, which Jan can share in the chat with everyone. Yeah.
Okay.
And then did anyone see another question we could answer right now, or should we move along?
It looks like there's a lot of questions related to graph problems and how you author graphing questions.
Do you want me to step through doing a new one?
Maybe we just step through doing one if we have time real quick. You know, so some of the questions are, how do you get to a graph in the first place? Can you use non-integers on the graph? How do you set up the question? So things like that. I think if you set up a simple one, we maybe can get some of these answered.
I want to try this one. I haven't tried it yet because I don't teach upper level stuff, but I'm going to anyway. So this may go bad, but that's okay because this is what's fun. So I'm going to go ahead and do y equals x squared. And so I want them to graph this function. And so we can't just do a line. See, this is where it really gets interesting, I think.
So click on the plus sign up there in the choices on the right. Yeah.
Here?
No, underneath lower, this is line, and then there's a plus in the circle. Go up a little bit. You see next to the point
there
line?
It is. Thank you.
Yeah. There you go.
That's so awesome. So I don't, let's see, I've got a line. I probably need parabola, right? And so I'll choose a parabola that they can draw. I haven't played with either one, so I'm going to throw it on there just for the heck of it. And I want to see what it does. So you're in a crash course right here on seeing how I might do this. Let's see, is this 3? Okay, so that's how we're doing it. All right. So it looks like we're going to have to probably teach the kids how to plot a parabola. You have 2 and probably, I see, okay. Anyway, that was too risky. Anyway, I'm going to take a shot at it. I don't think I'm plotting it properly, but we're going to try it anyway. Here, and then I think I go here. No, that's not.
Yeah, that's fine. There's two types of ways to draw parabolas. So that's why you have two little icons. And so the one on the left is the one with 2 points, the vertex and another point on the parabola. Then the one on the right, which you have selected, is with the directrix, where you have point C and D, and the focus, which is point A. So you selected this mode of generating parabolas.
Okay, cool. That's really fun. I just had a crash course, and this is so awesome, because this is what's so cool about this whole thing. I mean, even though you may be out of your depth or something like that, you can play with it and come up with some really, really cool things. And so if I try this, I just want to show the answer to see what it does. Okay, so I didn't set the answer yet, right? So I've got to come down here and, no, that's the background.
You do have an answer there.
I just didn't wait long enough. Oh,
and now scroll down, there it is.
There it is, yeah, yeah.
But you could enter an incorrect answer. Yeah, just draw something else by any 3 points.
Yes, well, I'll do what I did before and just do something.
Yeah, there you go.
And then check the answer. It's going to show that it's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can get it right. Just totally fun. It's exciting. The thing that I just think this is so exciting is that, and see if I get it right. It's not too hard. You can play with it. It usually starts with up here, you do the questions, you graph your sample. The important part here is to remember the plus, unlike what I just did. Remember the plus there, you can add the parts that you want the kids to see. And it's really important, as far as an educator goes, to only give them what they need, particularly in younger grades. And of course, you know, you're not going to do parabolas with youngins, but you might have them graph a line. So it's not just this, there's also the graphing shapes, geometry. That's for another subject.
Thanks so much, Duane. That was awesome. Great to see some of those questions that you're using with your students. And then also the dynamic parameters and graphing. So thanks for that. Yeah. Duane has authored thousands of questions on Edulastic and has created some really cool ones. So I think we're going to be sharing a couple of those assessments, sample assessments he's provided us, so you can play around with some of those questions yourself. And Lawrence, I'd like to invite you on to share the next portion of the presentation, please.
Yes, hi, thanks. Thanks everyone for attending. And there's so many features and we have so little time here. So I'm going to kind of blaze through a few slides because we've had a lot of questions about how does the evaluation work, which means you've set up some expected answer for the problem and the students will enter something else. So how do we grade that? And that's the topic I'll cover here, but like at a very high level. So just to give like everyone some introduction on how this works. So on this first slide, we're talking about defaults. So we've designed the grading system to work by using default behaviors. We don't want everyone to have to go in and change options and configure for every different question. So the hope is that the defaults, all the settings, will work for most cases, but we have to cover all types of math all the way to AP calculus. So sometimes the defaults just won't do what you want. And so we need to go in and maybe tweak or adjust some of the defaults. So the particular ones I'm going to talk about briefly are our evaluation modes, where we have literal, symbolic, and that's about mathematical equivalence. And then we also have various formats of the answers, and sometimes that's also referred to as syntax. So next slide. So this is how we get into the math questions. So you see down the left side, there's little square root of x. And Duane showed earlier the graphing where there's underneath the graphing type. And for math types, there's many subtypes, and you can also insert math questions in multi-part, which Duane had shown earlier. So this is just an entry to show you how we would get about these options, but they're in every math question. And the graphing questions have different options as well, where you can configure the graphing. So let's go in now. We'll go into the expression and formula mode, which is the one that should cover most of what you'd want to do. But there's also all these other cases. If you just want numeric entry, you have equations. There's a special configuration for matrices and inequalities. These are just to help you, though. If you go into this expression and formula at the top, that should cover everything from a simple numeric entry all the way to AP calculus. So let's just go in there and see what happens. So the next slide. So here we're in expression and formula mode, and I just want to point out what we call these options. So there's the little green arrow that points to the options under the expected answer field. And on the left side, there's a toggle where you can hide or show the options. And it also shows where you can set up the scoring, the dynamic parameters, which Duane talked about. There's a display area, keypads. We might talk about that towards the end. And so this is how you can configure your question and how the grading should work. So on the next slide. So now when we go to the additional options, there's 3 different settings here. And this is what I wanted to talk on here. So there's the symbolic mode, there's a literal mode, and there's also the syntax mode. So I want to describe what the differences are between these modes. Next one, thank you. So let's take a very basic question and we'll look at the symbolic evaluation mode. And say the answer to our question is 3/2 x, expressed as a fraction in front of the x, 3/2. This is the expected answer. I haven't shown you what the actual question is, but let's just work from the answer. So a lot of options are shown at the bottom part of the screen, but let's just ignore those for now. So we want the students to type 3/2 x for a correct answer. So everything's a default. Let's go to the next screen. So we go now to the preview mode because we want to see what the behavior of the grading is for this question. It's always a good idea when you author your own questions to look how they perform in the preview mode. And the preview mode, you should enter like a correct answer and see that it grades correctly, and some incorrect answers to see that those also grade as you would expect. If not, there could be an issue with some of the options or the defaults aren't doing what you expect them to do. So here in this case, the student entered 1.5x, and basically that's symbolically what we call symbolically equivalent to 3/2 x. It's mathematically equivalent. So this is considered correct, but you may not want that. So let's go to the next slide. So what if you want the students to enter exactly 3/2 x? In that case, you need to move to the literally equivalent mode. And in that case, if they enter 1.5x, it will be graded as incorrect. So we could say that the 1.5x is not literally equivalent to 3/2 x. And this is just one way you could do this question. There's always other ways you could do it. But I wanted to illustrate the difference between the symbolically equivalent and the literally equivalent mode. The equivalent syntax mode is where you want to check the form of something that the student could enter. Say it's a mixed fraction, or it's factored, or it's a line in a point slope form. You could do that in equivalent syntax. You could also do that in the symbolic mode, because we're putting all those required format options into the symbolic equivalent mode as well. Okay, next slide. So here it just shows the screen again when you look at all the options for the symbolic mode. There's many options there, and there's really not enough time to cover those here. So I just wanted to point out how you can do different things. At the bottom, I've selected a tolerance. So if you want to have a tolerance of 2, say the answer is 2,000, but you want to allow some small tolerance to occur, you can also put in a percentage of tolerance. And there's many, many options and many other ways to do things. And we're all the time adding more options as well. So these are not intended to be overwhelming, but hopefully helpful. And again, our intention is to have all the defaults work for most of the questions you'd want to use without having to go in here and do this. Okay, next slide. So this was my last slide. I just wanted to mention that there's many options to control the form and interpretations of these modes. And you should always preview them to see that they're working, the grading's working, especially if you're authoring a first question in a particular topic. It's good to go through. And we also have a lot of help articles in this Zendesk. There's a link to it below. And there's a lot more. You can see how these symbolic and literal options work. They're described there. So I can pause now if there's any questions.
So many questions, Lawrence.
Oh boy.
Thank you very much. No, I think these are all good. One of them is on rounding. So if you you want to give partial credit, can you set a range, or is there another way to accommodate rounding variance? I'm assuming that you know, maybe the answer, is there a tolerance? So you know, if the student puts 0.52 and the answer was supposed to be 0.521, etc., something like that.
Yeah, that's actually an excellent question. Right now, there isn't a way to do that. So all of these math evaluations are like an all or nothing. So if they're within the tolerance that you could specify in the options, which I had on an earlier screen, they would get all the credit. But I should mention that for graphing, there are right now, or it's going to be there in the next week or so, a way to do partial credit. So for example, if the student had to draw a circle, x squared plus y squared less than 1, and shade that area of the inequality, but they shaded it, or they had the inequality wrong, they could get partial credit. And for the regular math questions, we are looking at ways to support partial credit, but there's so many different scenarios and how they would be graded. So rather than like trying to tackle all these different scenarios one at a time, we're looking at ways where we could do like a more general partial credit system. That is all I can say on that one. Maybe it's too much.
Do you, I don't know if you have a live thing where you could show this, adding alternative answers for math text type. Do you have a an authoring account that you just show real quick how to do that? Yeah.
How do I share my screen? Let's see.
Oh, just at the bottom there.
Okay, wait, there it is.
I can share my screen, Lawrence, if you want.
Oh, good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Lawrence can,
Yeah, let it do this.
You can do it.
I'm not set up.
Perfect.
I'll
Great.
pause.
All right. Is my screen visible?
Yeah, see it.
Yeah. So Lawrence, go ahead and tell me. I can. Is there anything specific you want to show?
Yes, exactly. So let's go to the math type.
We want to show setting alternative answers for for math
Formula.
text type.
Yes, so the key thing is over on the right side there. Yeah, let's say 5, and an alternative answer is 6. So go over to the right of the screen. There you go. And now you have one alternative answer. Let's say that's equal to 6. Yeah, 5.5. And now we can go into preview mode. So you have two possible answers here.
Just imagine this is some quadratic equation.
Yeah, exactly. And now put 5.5. And now you should get credit because there was an alternative answer, so it's correct. So that's a brief example of how you can have two alternative or 2 answers, but you could have 4 answers.
And you could potentially give different points. So let's say half credit for this alternate answer, you could do that. So that's one potential solution for the tolerance issue that somebody asked earlier.
Yeah, that's a good idea, but one should experiment with the scoring and make sure that it's doing what you expect.
A little bit of a related question, which is I think that the answer is the partial credit, but Jeffrey asked, when I put an alternative answer and set it as half credit, Edulastic gives those students full credit. So I think that it's probably...
that was my caution with this. I don't know that it's going to work perfectly every time. It should. I haven't used it personally myself that much. You might have to, let's see. Yeah, I think there might be another setting that you need. If you go back to edit mode and we scroll down. Oh yeah, there's this, go back to edit mode.
Okay.
There you go, you got it. I think there's something down at the bottom with scoring.
Yeah, there's a partial credit at the bottom. Yeah. So it's whether you, no, keep going.
Yeah, lower.
No, up. Let's see.
The test level also, there is a option, and then
it's here too, where it says allow. Oh, this kind of question, it's probably
a bit above that, isn't it? Scroll up.
Yeah, I think this question type doesn't have it, expression and formula. I think you have to be in like a drag and drop or something where there's actual multiple answers. They're in a multiple choice or multiple select question, it'll say, or not multiple choice, but multiple select or drag and drop question, there'll be a control that says whether to allow partial credit. And whether it's all or nothing, or whether you're having partial credit. And if you're having partial credit, whether or not you penalize and how much.
Though it looks like it was working here from what Aditya had tried.
Yeah, it works. I mean, if you give credit here, yeah, it will give you partial credit.
Yep.
And you showed the thing where you can ignore the commas or whatever, that setting. Set thousand separator.
If you have an expression that involves only X and you want only X, students only type X, you could use this. 1000 separator if you want to allow students to use commas. You can set whether comma or dot or space. I mean, I think in US, comma is the most accepted one.
Okay, we have a bit more content we want to cover, and then we can answer some more questions. I want to also direct people to more resources. So a couple more tools that you'll find in Edulastic as someone who is looking for what's available for math. So Lawrence talked a little bit about question types, and he was on this page showing the different types that you can choose from. We saw Duane talk about some of the different graphing question types that are on there. If anyone needs help understanding which one to use, we do have a few blog posts that cover the different question types in our question type showcase. And as you can see here, these are some of the question types that are specific to math. We have a math section charts, graphing, multi-part, so a whole suite of capabilities when it comes to setting up the question that you want and setting it up in a robust way so you can focus on asking students exactly what you want them to demonstrate in an assessment. People were asking a little bit more about Power User, which Duane touched on earlier. In order to set Power User, you'll need to have a premium account, and you'll find it in your profile page, which I'll show in one moment. When you do turn on Power User, here are some of the controls that are then activated. So dynamic parameters, different scoring options, rubric grading, additional options for scoring and displays when it comes to setting up questions, custom math keypads. You can create your own math keypad, and additional options for graphing and number lines as well. And this is for if you're making your own questions or trying to dig deep into setting them up in certain ways, this will be very helpful. To turn on Power User, you go to your profile page and then you toggle it on with the little thing at the bottom here. So this is a zoom in of that option right there. Edulastic Premium also comes with a Desmos calculator. So in order to set that, when you're in your assessment that you're working on, you'll want to go to settings, and then you'll have these calculator options. If you click the graphing one, that opens up Desmos for your students. You won't be able to see the graphing calculator when you preview it as a student here, but if you logged in as a student, it would look like this to you. And so students can work from there to calculate things on that calculator. It's a very powerful tool. Also, when you're setting up questions like the numeric question type, you'll have options to add keypads for students. So students can work from this keypad to create fractions or other symbols. So this is where you find it. So if you're in edit mode on a question and you're entering the answer, you can select which keypad you want students to work from. So basic, basic without numbers, intermediate, intermediate without numbers, matrices, trigonometry, geometry, units. Getting a tongue twister here. And then here, there are just tons you can choose from. So I showed you the basic one before, but then you can really choose from a whole suite. And if you have Premium and the power function, power user toggled on, you can even customize your own keypad. So if you want to select very specifically what students can choose from, you can create that down in the advanced options. So it'll be under keypad in the advanced options here, which is a pretty cool feature. You can even create your custom keys. And now I want to direct your attention to some more resources that'll help you dig deeper into Edulastic and explore some of the topics we talked about today even more. One of the best places you can learn more about math authoring and the math resources available to you through Edulastic is through our help desk. So if you go to edulastic.zendesk.com, you can learn more, get help, discover tips, and explore all sorts of topics, either using the search bar up here, or if you went to authoring questions, you'll find a really nice section on authoring math questions specifically, where you will find some really nice articles as well that were pulled together by Lawrence and other members of our team on the topics that we touched on today, like evaluation and other tools. We also have a teacher training hub on our website at edulastic.com/resources. If you need or want a more basic overview of Edulastic, you'll find training sessions there. If you want to become Edulastic certified and really dive into the platform, we also have options all listed on this page. Check it out. We're going to record, this webinar has been recorded and it will be posted on our YouTube channel. So if you want to view it at a later time, you can visit that. We'll also link to it in a follow-up email. Our YouTube channel contains hundreds of training videos and webinars and resources. And we encourage you to browse through as you are exploring Edulastic even more. And then if you liked this webinar or you want to learn about additional advanced testing tools available to you on Edulastic, such as the Express Grader, report cards, downloading scores, assigning and unassigning, reports, and other power tools, my colleague Jenny Takoyan will be presenting tomorrow on all these fantastic features, so you can up-level your skills on Edulastic even more. Also, we do have a follow-up survey. I know that a lot of people had questions today, and we are hoping to answer them or at least follow up with you maybe via email if we don't get around to them during this live event. But also, the follow-up survey is a great location to let us know how we did, and also let us know what kind of resources you would find helpful if there are additional tools and tips that would be helpful to you. In addition to what you'll find on those resources I just highlighted, we're continuing to update articles and create more help videos and all sorts of resources to make navigating and using Edulastic as easy as possible. And if anyone has any additional questions, I encourage you to put them in the chat or in the Q&A actually, so they don't get lost. Q&A is the way to go. Looks like we have a few more minutes, so we'll try to get to a few of them. And then Leslie and Jan, if any pop up, please jump in and let us know what they are. And of course, you can stay in touch with us. We love hearing from you. It's the educators around the country who give us their feedback, who help drive the product and really help us understand how we can make Edulastic the best it can be. So please stay in touch with us. We're also on social media. We're always providing tips, tricks, and tools. And thank you for joining us today. So question and answer time.
Awesome. I think one thing that would be really good to clarify, and maybe Aditya or Leslie, you could talk about this, is what was covered today that is a premium feature and what was covered today that is a free feature.
Yeah, sure. I can talk about that. So all questions that are available for authoring are available regardless of your subscription level. The additional options that you get, the advanced options, and that includes dynamic parameters, ability to annotate, ability to put a background image, those are all part of the premium features. And so a free user will not get the advanced options from when they're authoring questions.
Great, thanks for clarifying, Aditya. And then another one that came up that I think, Aditya, you mentioned you wanted to answer live. It says, for graphing points, are you restricted to integers? Or could a student place a point at 0, 1.5, for example?
Yeah, so the answer to that is yes. You need to set the graph grids accordingly. And unlike the earlier version of Edulastic, you can actually have different scales for X and Y axis. And you can potentially have X-axis go from 0.25, 0.5, 0.751. You know, all of those options are possible. So yes, answer to that question is yes. It is possible to be done.
Great, thank you. And then one other one that we got is if a student or a teacher pauses the test, will the dynamic parameters change upon reopening, or would they stay the same?
No, they won't change. They'll remain the same.
Great, thanks.
I want to say a huge thank you again to our presenters, to Duane and Lawrence for joining us today and for showing us some of the really cool math tools and features that are available on Edulastic. We really appreciate the time you've taken to prepare and then present today. And also for all of you who have joined us today, thank you for spending this hour with us. We hope you enjoy exploring the math tools on Edulastic.